Afternoon. All right. Normally we do these Q&As on Friday, but we've got my father-in-law's funeral tomorrow. So I'm pre-recording this, and I went to record it, and then I was like, you know what? It's just as easy to go live as it is to record it. So I don't expect anyone to be here. If you join in, come say hi. Love to chat. But I don't expect anyone to be here because this is completely off script. You can see we got family coming in, and so my son had to give up his room. And in exchange for giving up his room, he wanted to sleep on my camping cot. And so I've got the cot here with the mattress. I had to hijack one of my daughter's pillows for him. So you're getting the whole raw, real experience of Chris, the time freedom lawyer. Um, but with all of that being said, I still wanted to jump in and have this conversation today. So the question that was most, oh, look, I've even got the visitor sticker from my son's school. He's got a talent show that we went to. My other son's got his talent show this afternoon. So I'm leaving the visitor sticker on. You're getting the whole unfiltered version of Chris here. So all this being said, the Q&A, what we do every single week is we go in and on Mondays, we ask a question, and then on Fridays, we answer it. So this week, we asked a bunch of questions to see what people are interested in. Like the landslide vote was, how do I get an employee to follow an SOP without constantly babysitting them? And the comments were pretty interesting on this as people were talking about it. We heard a lot of things, and you've probably felt or heard or said something like this maybe yourself. I delegate things and then I watch it go sideways and I just have to fix it myself. So it ends up costing me time to delegate, and then it ends up costing me time to fix it, but it's just been better for me to do it myself, or no one can do it as well as I can, right? What was the other one? How many of you have done that same thing more than once with the same task? Sorry, there was a couple of, I'm just like kind of looking through the comments that people said on this. And really, but the reoccurring, refreshing, or repeat response has been either you can't get your employees to buy in, your employees can't do it as well as you can, or you're constantly stressed about whether or not it's getting done, and so you end up micromanaging, right? The cool thing is no matter which of these pain points you have, whether it's your team's not as good, or whether it's you're micromanaging because you want to make sure it gets done right, or you just don't get buy-in, right? I think what a lot of people were saying, that's why I think this question resonated with so many people, is like, hey, like I have these ideas, I teach them to my team, and then they don't do it. The question I was going to start this entire conversation on was, does your team, if you're anything like me, this is probably going to sting a little bit, does your team get whiplash every time you read a book? So you read a book, you get some cool ideas, you get super excited to teach it to them. They feel like they've gotten whiplash because you just had implemented some things that you haven't even got together from the first book. And every time you finish a book, are you giving your team whiplash? And in response to that, your team now sometimes just tries to avoid you. Like they listen to you, they say whatever, but then they just kind of wait to see if this is going to stick. That was one of my main issues. I had a mastermind we closed down last year, but before we closed it down, we had a bunch of high 6-figure, low 7-figure law firms in there, and Dan Martell asked us that question in our mastermind. I had him come present at it, and it was really cool because he asked it, and like 80% of that room was like, yeah, that's me, right? So it can be any reason, but at the end of the day, you've got an employee who's not doing, either they're not following the SOP, or they're not using it, or you can't trust that the quality is going to be there. How do we solve it, right? So to understand how to solve this, we have to understand why it's a problem. And the main reason something like this is a problem is because most of us went into business because we're good at what we do, and that actually makes us really bad at teaching it. So if anybody remembers Michael Jordan, you better all remember Michael Jordan. And I already know Amy's going to make fun of me because every time I do an example, Amy makes fun of me because they're all basketball related, but it's what I know. So Michael Jordan, incredible basketball player. Many would argue he's the greatest of all time. And those who disagree are wrong. And, and I hate saying that because I'm a Jazz fan and he beat me twice. But after his career, he went into like coaching and ownership and that kind of stuff. And you'll notice none of his teams really did very well. In fact, there's this story where when he owned the Bobcats and their team was not doing very well, he showed up to practice one day in basketball gear, dressed, played with the second unit, beat the first unit, and then made everybody on the team take his shoes off. And they weren't allowed to wear Jordans anymore because he didn't want them to disgrace his name and his brand. Perfect example of someone who's really, really good at what they do, wasn't able to translate that into teaching other people. It's the same reason why when people ask me, like, how do I find a coach or what do I do? How do I find a mentor, whatever? I always say you should find someone who's one, done what you want to do, right? They need to have experience, and two, that they've helped other people do the same. So I want you to pay attention to both of those elements here. I know this isn't what the training is, but it's really going to help understand this solution on the back end, okay? So when I say that, done what you want to do, you want this to not just be. There's plenty of people out there who love to read books and do those types of things. They've never actually done it, but they love teaching it, but they can't. They're not certain it works. They think it works because they trust someone else, but they've never actually done it themselves. And if that's the case, they don't make the best teachers. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. They don't know because they haven't done it. But you also want somebody who's helped other people do the same. For two reasons. One, we want to avoid the lottery syndrome where, if someone wins the lottery and they go, hey, look, all you got to do is play the game. If you play it enough and if you believe strongly enough, you will win the lottery just like I did. We all know that's wrong, right? It's a great example of it, but it's a perfect example of why it's wrong because the statistics are not in our favor. That's just not a true statement, right? But if they've helped other people do the same, now we know that it's not just theory because they've done it themselves, and we know it's a repeatable process. That's really what you're looking for. And that's the takeaway of this entire presentation, is that if someone creates a repeatable system, a process, then other people can do the same thing. So now it comes back to our SOPs. Are we creating repeatable systems? Or are they lottery syndrome? This worked, I got lucky, let's try it again. Or are they not understandable either, right? So that's the core here. And we're going to talk about how to do that and how to get people to follow through with it. So step one, diagnose the real problem. When it comes to employees using SOPs, one, we need to ensure that they're using them, and two, we need to ensure that they work. And so often what's happening is either they don't believe in the process or they don't understand the process, right? Because if it's a repeatable system that works, they would do it if it made their job easier. So you got to start thinking in the employee's mind, why are they not doing this? So for me, when my team wasn't following my SOPs, the reason for it was that they didn't believe in the process. I was changing things so frequently that they were like, whatever, like if I just say I'm going to do it and then I ignore him, within 3 to 4 weeks, he'll have finished another book and we'll be trying something different and he'll let this one fall through. So that was my weakness, right? You're going to have to decide what was your weakness, but that was what my weakness was. So spend some time asking yourself, like, what is it inside your employee's head as to why they aren't doing this? Do they not believe it's going to work? Do they believe it's going to make their job harder? That was an issue we ran into with KPIs for a long time in our firm, is I couldn't get my team to do KPIs because it was costing them a ton of time and they'd rather go do the work than do the work to tell me that they did the work, right? So that's the first thing. how I do this to fix this issue. On when my team, how do I say this? The step one is I stabilize my law firm with quarterly goals. And so by having a quarterly goal, I was able to we would take a quarterly goal and then we'd create our KPIs, and they all pointed towards the quarterly goal. And that allowed us to not, blow with the wind in every single book that I was reading. That fixed my individual problem. If you have different problems, I'd love to hear about them. We do actually have a couple of people. I didn't think anybody would be on here because I'm recording not at the right time, but we do have a couple of people on here. So if you have a comment and want to talk about why your team's not following, I'd love to hear it. But I stabilized with quarterly goals, and I ran my KPIs towards my quarterly goals, and we didn't deviate from the quarterly goal. We may deviate on how we got there, but everything was keeping us straight in line for the entire quarter. Then based on the KPIs, whatever wasn't in line with where we wanted to be, those are the things we worked on improving. So if something was working, we didn't improve it. This is kind of a funny story that we tell in my business quite a bit, because my show up rate in my firm was astronomically high, and it had been for a really long time. And so we never put together a system to improve show up rates. And I was working with a mentor one time, and we changed a couple of things, and the show up rates changed. And then all of a sudden we were having issues with our show up rates. And I was talking to my mentor. He's like, well, what do you do to fix that? And it was really funny because I was like, nothing. We've never done it. And I was like, he was like, how can you, like, at this point, my firm had been around for like 9 years. So he's like, how in the world have you gone 9 years of owning a firm and you've never put together a system that increases your show up rate? And my answer was, we've never had a problem. Like, I don't fix things that aren't broken. And so because I never had an issue with it, I never fixed it. So that was first, right? Clear goals, KPIs that point to the goals. That foundation allows my team to know that we're headed in the right direction. From there, we then build systems to improve any of the KPIs that are not in line. So we ask the question, what should we work on? And then we build the systems off of that. That allows us to test things and ensure they're working. And so when I'm building SOPs, I am either building SOPs for things I know that are working currently. So my team's doing something and it's getting above average results. If that's happening, I'm asking the question why, and we're building the system off of that. Those SOPs are always the easiest to follow, right? Because it's already working. My team's bought in on it because it's working. And so we're like, all right, let's systematize this so that everybody can do it. So you're starting to pay attention, right? I've asked the question, why are my team not following it? And the answer is because they don't believe in it. They either don't believe in it or they don't care. If they don't care, then you fire them, right? If someone just doesn't care about their job, you let them go. But other than the few people who don't care, them aside, it's because they don't believe in it. And so I create my SOPs based off of what's working. And we have KPIs linked to those. The other side is a KPI is underperforming, and so we're fixing an issue, but we're bringing it together as a team. The people who are working in that specific area, we build the SOP together, and then we follow it to make sure it works. My team has now bought into these systems because they can see why we're doing them. They can see that it's either a system that's already working and everybody wants to improve their efficiency. Most of our pay, I pay a lot of people hourly, but we're pretty flexible on the hours. If they get all their work done, they can usually go home early and get paid the same amount. We'll pay them for the rest of the day, even if they're not working the rest of the day, because I want to encourage efficiency. So that's, my team is pretty on board with that, right? But so now we're creating systems that either they know work and we've just repeated the process to make sure it works for everybody, or we're creating a system to fix it, and they understand that we have to follow the system so that we know what's working and what isn't. And sometimes we'll try two systems. will say, hey, we got this issue, and employee number A, A will say, I think this works. Employee B says, I think this works. Like, great. So we create the system for both of them, and we test them, A/B test them, right? Half the team does this, half the team does that. We compare the results to see which one works. Once we learn what does work, we get rid of the system that doesn't, and we stick with the one that does. So I have found, hands down, the best thing I could do for these systems things was to make sure that my team bought in and believed in them. Now, once we have the systems, right, if people are still not following them, I'm going to lean back to the fact that I think they just can't find them. They don't know what they are. They don't know where they are. So we have created a system in our company on how to ask questions. This system in and of itself has helped my team use their playbook more than anything. And that is, before they're allowed to ask a question of me or any of their managers, they have to first look in the playbook. Is it there, right? Second, they have to do the 1-3-1 rule from Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time. So they have to clearly define their problem. They have to come up with 3 possible solutions. And then they have to tell me which of those 3 is the best solution to them. So if someone asks me a question, before I answer anything, I say, what does the playbook say? And this was the hardest thing for me to do because I know the answer and I could have solved it in 2 minutes, but I had to train my team to think for themselves. So I'd say, what does the playbook say? And then what's your 1-3-1? And they would go through it. And then if their solution is going to cost my team less, my company less than a certain amount of money. So my probationary employees, it's $50. My non-attorney staff, it's $100. My attorney staff, it's $500, and my partners, it's $1,000. If it's less than that amount, then they have to just go make the decision. Anytime someone uses the 1-3-1 rule to make a decision, we document it. And this is a whole nother system we'll talk about a different day. But we document that, and then we create systems based off of the 1-3-1 decisions people have made. But what this ended up doing, right, is people had to use the systems because I wouldn't answer their question unless they were. And then the KPIs on the back end are how I confirm that people are using the systems. And so every role in our company has KPIs. Those are key performance indicators, numbers that they track. They're tracking the actions that they take, and they're tracking the results those actions produce. And I watch those. So I don't have to micromanage what people are doing anymore. I'm micromanaging the numbers. The numbers come in, and we look. What's our goal? Are we hitting it from every category? If a category is behind the goal, we dive into those numbers and we ask why. Now, sometimes what ends up happening here, and this is kind of the final thought I wanted to end on, is you will ask, you'll be doing this and it'll become aware, you'll realize that someone's not using an SOP. Generally, you'll know that they're not using an SOP because they're performing under the bar, right? If you find out someone's not using an SOP and they're performing above the bar, then figure out what they're doing and make a new SOP that matches it, right? But most of your team, once you've been doing this same process of documenting what's winning and making systems that's fixing stuff, like your team will start getting on board with using them. And so if they have a thing that's better than the SOP, they're more than happy to tell you because they want to be, acknowledged for that. But for the rest of us, when someone's not using it, I always come back and say, okay, did you know we had an SOP? Why were you not using it? And often, maybe our checklist isn't up to date or something and we need to tweak the SOP. I would dare say 80% of the time, the reason someone's not using an SOP is a fixable solution. Like our checklist wasn't up to date or they were busy and and we can fix it and they come back in line. So I always talk to them about it first. If that doesn't work, then you have to have some sort of written write-up procedure where you write them up and let them know, hey, this is not acceptable in this company. We have systems in place. We follow systems. We are a system-led company. That's how we ensure that we have consistent results over time, and that you write them up with some sort of probationary period of how they're going to fix that. Again, 90% of the time. So 80% of the time, you're going to fix it with the first conversation. Of the 20% that doesn't go through, I dare say another 80 or 90% are going to be fixed with the write-up. And if someone gets through those two stages and they're not willing to use the system, then you do have to let them go. But I'll tell you that doesn't happen very often if you're doing everything before. If you're creating systems to either document what's working and celebrating the person who's working. Hey, Diane figured this out. It's working really well. She's performing significantly above the bar. So we've created a training so everybody can learn how to do it, right? Or, hey, we are performing under what we wanted to. So let's create let's test out and figure out how we can fix that. If your systems are coming from there so that people have buy-in, your systems and your KPIs are linked to a uniform goal, that's going to help a ton, then you should be fine. Most people will buy in. If that doesn't fix it, then don't answer their questions unless they've looked in the playbook first and done the 1-3-1 rule. That's going to get people to think for themselves. We've done a couple of trainings on that, so I kind of skimmed over that. But if you have questions about like how to get people to ask questions and think for themselves, let me know. Reach out, and we'll send you some of those other trainings that we did recently on the whole, is it in the playbook and what's the 1-3-1 rule. And if that doesn't work, then you call them out on it. Hey, you're not using the systems. Why? Talk to them first. If that doesn't work, have a formal written write-up process. If that doesn't work, then you have to let them go. But that won't happen very often if you're doing everything before. So I hope this is helpful. I know it's 20 minutes, give or take, of your time. I normally would do these a little bit longer, but I wanted to at least jump in here and give you something this weekend where I was going to be gone. If you need help with this, so one of the things, I've been doing one-to-one coaching for a long time, and I liked it, and it's great, and I'll still do that with people who want it. But what I have found actually is I'm having significantly better results. I'm talking like 2 to 3 times better results ever since I switched up how I'm doing this. And what I've been doing now is I still do the one-to-one coaching. It's twice a month. The first meeting, I meet with you as the CEO of your company. We go through your KPIs, we identify your bottlenecks, we work through anything that you need to work through as the CEO, and we identify what your company needs to work on to hit their goals. So obviously we set goals first, we set KPIs to get there, right? Then we identify what you need to do, and we figure out why. The next meeting, the second meeting in the month, I actually meet with your team, and I teach them this. And what I have found is, especially if you're someone like me who did really well, you grew quickly, you had some success, but you learned a lot along the way, and so you kind of gave your team some whiplash. If you're not having team buy in like you want to, it's really helpful for someone from the outside to come in, show them their goals, show them their KPIs, show them how the things we're changing are fitting in line with that uniform project, and that it's not going to go away. I'm doing this with, I've got 2 companies that I'm doing this with right now, and their results have just been astronomical. So my team and I, we agreed, like, you know what, we need to offer this to more people. So I've opened up 2 more spots. And I don't do this with a lot of people, so 4 to 5 is definitely going to be our cap. As of right now, we're just opening up 2 more spots. We may open a third if we can move some things around. So if that's something you're interested in, you're like, man, like, I know I need systems. I know I need some help. I know I need my team to buy in. The nice thing about doing this way is it's kind of a fractional cost. So it's significantly cheaper than a standard, COO or something like that. So if there's anything you're interested in, just let me know. I really only have 2 more spots. So I'm not like advertising this out a whole lot, but if it's something you're interested in, let me know. We'll make it happen. So thank you so much for letting me go off script, go a day early. If you need anything, as always, please reach out. We do have a guide that goes with this, and my team told me I needed to let you know. And you know what? They didn't even tell me what it was. So I don't know if we have one. If we do, my team will put it in the comments to let you know what we have. But if not, if you have questions, let me know. So thank you. As always, this is Chris Kaiman, Time Freedom Lawyer, and we'll see you in the next one.